Right, recording.
Cool.
So I'm delighted today that I've managed to get some time in the diary with Mark Probert. Mark is managing partner of Cactus, the leading UK agency growth consultancy, and also managing partner of Agencynomics, a social enterprise and the largest free of charge community in the UK for agency founders. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me on. Feel
I'm del-
honoured to be the guest you've had on this.
no, I'm honestly, I've wanted to have you on for ages, so I'm really excited about diving into this topic. Would you mind spending a couple of minutes, first of all, Mark, just talking about you, your background, a bit of your experience, and how you help agencies?
Okay, are you on the short story or the long story?
However, it comes.
um, okay, well maybe it's helpful to go back a few years. So whilst I was at school in Hampshire, I'd a variety of different jobs, and I was somebody that never really wanted to go to university. I had this thing in me where I wanted to go and work, and I had various things going on, a car wash business, run a cigarette kiosk of all things,
What?
stuff like that. And went into college. Quite kind of enjoyed my business studies. Thought, well, actually, maths might be the thing for me. I was quite good with numbers at the time. Maybe not so much now that there's technology to do these things for you. But so I went into accountancy practice, and I went in at the age of 18. Had a couple of other jobs on the side at the weekends and so on. And I probably then spent about the next 18 years trying to get out of accountancy practice. So 18 and 18, even I can add that up, 36. So uh, basically went into different accountancy, doing audits, tax, a bit of M&A work, business advisory. And what I always loved doing was working with SMEs. Absolutely loved it. I loved seeing somebody come up with an idea, run with that idea, and either make it or not make it, but try and help them a little bit along the way with what we could advise on. But when I said about trying to escape, I'd got to the point where I moved up to Scotland probably 19, 20 years ago, with my wife, now wife, Kirsty, and joined a variety of firms up here, tried couple of different ones, went to Grant Thornton, which was my last one, obviously big multinational. And I'd got to the point then really where I was trying to get out of doing accounts and audit and tax. And so I wanted to do something a bit different. But perhaps naively, what I ended up doing there was working on some big global brand, audits, accounts, and so on. But I also learned quite a lot at that time in that environment in Scotland, in Grant Thornton, about marketing and the value of marketing. So for once, first time ever in my life, I kind of took a step back and thought, hang on a minute. I dabbled into industry once upon a time before, didn't like it, went into a company that was too big, came back out into practice. I thought it's probably time to be a bit selfish and go, well, forget this party route that everybody kind of steps into in accountancy, where you're a trainee and you progress up the rungs and so on. I thought it's probably time to try something a bit different. I took time to think about what that was, and that ended up being Cactus. So I knew Pete is a really good friend of mine that I've known since I was 4 or 5. So whole backstory there, which is a different
Didn't know you'd known each other
podcast.
for so long.
Different podcast, that one. There's a few stories in there, and he was up in Edinburgh one weekend. We were sat in my living room for a glass of wine, catching up. And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Do you know what? I just need to do something different. I'm fed up doing what I'm doing. It doesn't mean anything. I don't feel like I'm helping anybody. Kind of lost the sort of buzz." So anyway, he went away, gave me a call the next night when he got home and said, "Oh, you should come and join us." Totally out of the blue. What does that mean? And what Cactus was at that time, and that was probably 7 years ago, nearly now. Um, Cactus was Pete Hall, Spencer Gallagher, my colleagues, ex-agency owners, grown and sold their agency, their design and build agency, and they'd set up Cactus. So Cactus was consulting to independent agencies in the kind of 700,000 turnover up to about 4 or 5 million space. And they were helping them holistically around, all the areas of the business: finance, ops, marketing, sales, culture, and trying to help people get to what their vision, whatever their vision was. They're trying to help them on that journey. Pete very much helping on the finance and ops, Spencer very much the tech, sales, marketing. So again, long story short, I joined 6.5 years, sort of probably about that time now ago. And over the time, I've partnered with other ex-agency owners. I do very similar to what Pete does, helping very much on the financial and operational side of businesses. That can be getting my hands dirty on some of the stuff, up to, helping people hire in their finance teams or their operational teams, up to M&A work, which, last year at Cactus, I think we did 12 deals of different varieties. So, So that's what I now do, and I don't ever call it a job now. I think I ended up, when I looked for that role 7 years ago, I had various other opportunities, but this one sort of stood out because it was helping SME entrepreneurial people with an idea, and yeah, I love what I do now. It's not really a job.
It shows as well.
There's a long story. There's a long story, Jenny.
No,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fantastic, and I didn't really know half of that, so this has been
Right.
really valuable already for me. So I know how many agencies you work with, and it's very difficult to actually get a time with you to work with you. But when an agency comes to you and says, right, an agency owner says, I want to grow, what are the very first things that you do with that business? What do you look at first?
Well, the very first thing I do is spend some time getting to know them, because everyone knows about four F's, as they call them: fun, fame, fortune, future, kind of thing. And what I always want to do is feel like I get to know the person. For me, I did a poll out on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. I think I know which way you answered as well, actually similar to me, where is what is the one sort of area of the business you'd really want to, you'd want to monitor a KPI on. And for me, people have thought I'd have said finance, and I said clients. Clients are key to me, like absolutely fundamentally. It's about client care to me, always has been. And that for me is, you've got to enjoy working with somebody. And I suppose my motto is, it's got to be bloody hard work for me, but it's got to be enjoyable, and that for me is get to know the person first and foremost. And then there's all the usual stuff, isn't there? Funnels of how you get them to work with you and so on. And something we implemented a while ago was we put in a health check for the business, where what's really useful for that is I have a lot of kind of new business, if you want to call them that, calls with people that have completed their health check on our website at Cactus. And it identifies the area of the business where they don't see themselves scoring very highly. So it might be, I don't know, they might not have a cash flow projection, or it might be they have no marketing strategy, bizarrely, even though they're a marketing agency. And these things often root out quite quickly for us what their problems are. And so for me, it's get to know the person first and foremost on, at the moment, obviously a lot of calls, get to really feel like you know them, and starting to, get a bit friendlier with them over time, building up a friendship more than a working relationship. I think it's really important. And then there's the work side, identifying quickly what their problems are so that you can help them quickly. Because a lot of people think they need help like yesterday. But it's trying to identify what the real issues are, because they might think it's one thing and it might not be that thing.
Okay, perfect. So I'll include a link to the health check on the
Oh
Cactus
yes, yeah,
website,
okay,
because
yeah.
that would be, it sounds really, really valuable, and absolutely you would imagine that it would be some kind of audit. So that sounds like it's super
It is like an
valuable.
audit, yeah, yeah.
So I know that your specialism is the financial and operations side. So can you talk us through some of the kind of standard financial benchmarks and parameters that you believe would help an agency grow?
Okay. For me, there's this a huge one is around staff costs. Obviously, at the current time as well, that can be a bit difficult for some people to monitor because they still got all the furlough stuff and that going on. But um, for me, this is one of the, what's the word for this? This is a confusion in the market. There are other advisors that look at staff costs in a different way to how we do at Cactus. So the biggest thing for us really is staff costs to gross profits. So that for me is the biggest metric to watch, or one of the big five, as I call them, I suppose. So what I mean by us different to others is a lot of the big networks will treat their gross profit differently to how an independent would. So they will do sales. I've got lots of terminology now when people are calling different things, Jenny, but sales less cost of sales equals gross profit. A lot of people advisors will put staff costs into the cost of sale. So
Right.
if a web developer's working specifically on a web project for a client, they might attribute some of their time to cost of sale. It's a cost of making that sale. We wouldn't do that. So what we do is very much try and keep, a lot of what we do at Cactus, believe it or not, is try and keep it very simple. So we're quite aware that in the independent space, people don't often have resource. Okay, so and they don't want to buy in the non-fee earners, like the finance people, maybe the marketeers or whatever, the project managers. You'll know this with what you do in your account management, project management stuff. So for me, the staff cost to gross profit ratio is we keep sales as sales. We put pretty much nothing in cost of sales. So it might be a bit of a hosting of a website, might be or a license, if you're reselling it to a client, but all people costs are in overheads. So in our view, all people are overheads. As soon as you hire them, they're a fixed cost. Yep. But a lot of other people completely change that, do it differently, split the employee costs and so on. Some of the big the big networks do it that way. When I did a deal last year with an agency in Bristol, we sold them to McCann's. McCann's did it that way, but that's because they've got a whole team of finance people doing their numbers and analysis, So what we say is, an agency of £1 million might not even have a full-time finance person, more often than not, they don't. So whether they should do is another question, but why make it complicated? Why make it complicated?
Okay, and so it simplifies it. It just simply
it simplifies
from an accountancy perspective, or more from an understanding.
I think it's more. There's no. By the way, there's no right or wrong way in accountancy. I mean, I can say that, I suppose, with my accountancy degree hat on or whatever, that you can do it either way. It's up to you. But for us, it's about that day-to-day, month-to-month internal reporting. Why make it really complex and take my salary and put some up there, some down the bottom, and then go, oh, well, hang on, what are my staff costs and my revenue? I've got to do this funny calculation to work it all out. Well, why waste all that time? Why? And what we would say is, if you're operating between 55, it used to be 55 to 65% of your, let's say, gross profit figure, which is nearly your sales figure in the Cactus world, then you're about right. You're running an agency that's about the right kind of staffing level. Although I would say at the moment, a lot of people are edging towards, say, 70% regularly, because they're investing a little bit ahead of sales, a little bit. A number of agencies, probably the ones that are faster growing.
Right. Why are they doing that? Just so that they've got people ready to kind of hit the ground? And
people's ready to hit the ground. They've got the buffer of the government money. So a lot of agencies, believe it or not, are quite buoyant in terms of cash reserves at the moment. Still are, even though it's 5th of May sort of time. They've still got a buffer of reserves. So they're thinking, well, actually, we're quite confident at the moment. It's hard to get people. So let's go on a hiring, let's try and hire some people in. It's hard to get them. There's still a lot of people, some people are moving, some aren't, and so on. Why not invest some of that money in people? Because that's ultimately what we're going to be trying to get our value in going forward. So
that makes total sense. Have you got any other benchmarks that you can share with us?
Yeah. There's so we tend to say, or I tend to say as well, that 3 times somebody's salary is what they should be earning in agency. You might have heard that before. So if somebody's on 40 grand, they should be doing 120 grand billable work. Lots of the bigger agencies have that number down to a fine, 3.2 or whatever. But we would say that it's Cactus Fag Packet is 3 times 3 is the revenue kind of target for everybody. Liquidity is always one. Some people ask me often, how much money should we have in the bank? And then they pull out their mobile phone, and then it all goes wrong. And you go, it's not about what you've got today. It's about what you've got covering your costs and so. And so some people work to 6 times their overheads. So if their overheads are 100 grand a month, they think they should have 600 grand in the bank. I think, and I'm quite a cautious finance person in some respects. I think that's an awful lot of headroom to give yourself if you're trying to scale something quite quickly. And all this, I suppose, depends on vision and so on as to what you're doing. But, a couple of months is enough. A couple of months in the bank is enough. So there's a ratio I do. Pete hates this one. I call it he always calls me Horatio Probert, as in Horatio Nelson. There's the current ratio where you do your assets on your balance sheet, bank and cash, and your debtors who owes you money, divided by your liabilities. You owe the VAT man, you owe HMRC your payroll, you owe your suppliers if you've got any. That if that's more than 3 to 1, so £3 to £1, you're in quite a healthy position for a lot of even project-based agencies. If it's 2 to 1, you're fine. If it's less than 1, you've got problems.
There's some poor agency leader listening to this somewhere thinking, oh
no. Maybe.
This is fascinating. And what about billable percentages? Do you have any benchmarks around that, or does it totally depend
we do. Yeah, I suppose the minimum for us is 64%. So what I mean by that is, so if somebody's capacity, if they're 80% available to work, because they've got holidays and so on, and then nobody is super efficient, nobody's a machine, although sometimes I think you might be with all these podcasts, Jenny, they're amazing. Nobody's a machine, so that's 80% again. So 80% of 80% is 64. So what I mean by that is the minimum number somebody should be able to do that's a billable resource is 64% of their time. And you'll find that, in a dev agency, maybe a web developer's 80 or 90% kind of thing. In creative, maybe not as high. And then different job roles, not as much. Obviously, account management, very different and so on. So, but we would tend to work on somebody should be doing about 64% if they're a mostly billable resource.
Mm-hmm.
And you tend to find, I think in some of the industry reports that have been done in the last couple of years that, some people you'll know as well, it works out. I think the average is about 63, 65, something like that. So our starting figure is about right usually.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And what about your views on account management? Should account management be billable or non-billable?
This
You
one
knew I
for
was
me.
going to ask you
I
that.
did. Well, I didn't, but I did, sort of thing. Yeah, you're right. Should it be, sorry, billable or non-billable? Did you say? And should it be split up in terms of job roles? Or...
No, well, just in terms of the account management role, should it be billable or not? What's your view, or does it vary, or is there just from your perspective?
I think most people tend to say it's not billable, but I still think there is elements of it that could be billable, and it just depends how you're packaging up your offering to your client, doesn't it? Really, at the end of the day, if you're value-based pricing, then you can wrap all that up, and there's no issue, is there? This is your price, and that's what we create, and somebody you and I work with that does that kind of thing, and so on. So maybe it is chargeable, maybe it has been billed, but it's just not been identified to the client as such.
I have to ask you, because you've mentioned it, how many agencies do you come across that do actually manage to do value-based pricing?
Limited. I'd be honest. I know it's the utopia, isn't it? People want to try it and so on. One that you and I work with, another one that I work with on my, sometimes I work in a pair. I probably should have said this earlier on, actually. I work in a partnership with a guy called Danny Turnbull, who you'll know most of the time now, but I also do have a number of clients of my own that I've always had for years in different guises of support to them. And I would say there's probably two of those that do it. One very, very well, but that's mainly because they've got a couple of big clients and they've had them for quite a few years. And I think they've always sold on that basis. And one that's been trying it recently and it's been working. So
amazing.
I think the other thing is people worry too much, don't they, about pricing, about changing their prices. How do they find out what the competition is doing? I know that's not a hot topic for you and other people, but why don't you just try things? I mean, I just don't get it sometimes. I think people overanalyze it, or when they overanalyze finance too much and numbers, and it's just like, just try it. What have you got to lose, kind of thing?
That's really good advice, actually. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been so valuable already, Mark. Thank you for sharing so many benchmarks. I'm sure that's been a few light bulb moments going off. I'm interested to know about your thoughts on the most conducive agency business model that you've found has worked the best if someone wants fast growth.
Interesting. You probably imagine I say pods here, and
I
I will say pods, but I won't say who, but I helped somebody last year. Well, I've worked with them for quite a few years, and I helped them sell their agency. And they've gone into a much bigger thing now. I think it's 160 people. Agency have bought them from overseas. And I asked the owner of that. Well, I'm still working with them. I'm still supporting them and so on. So I asked the owner. I think it was a couple of weeks ago on the board call. How did you scale your? I'm fascinated. How did you scale your agency? And I'm thinking, well, he's got to have done this via the pods. I'll come onto the pods in a minute, but got to have done this via some kind of pod. And he just basically, and it's a development agency in the main. And he was just like, we just made sure we got the best people we could get. And I said, yeah, but you must have had a structure. And he said, not really. People just people that are doing the development also sell to the client. And I'm going, how does this happen? That, I was struggling with this concept like quite a bit. And he just said, it's just all about getting the best people and then training them. And eventually, if they go off to say, I want to just be a developer and I don't want to do any kind of account management or sales, whatever it is, then that's fine. We're fine with that. But we give them a lot of training around different areas. And I know you've said to me before, you had sales training many years ago, and you found that like game changing almost. And this guy had done that with people that you wouldn't have anticipated would have had sales training. You wouldn't necessarily be giving sales training to the development team and so on. But he said, let them try it, let them see how they get on, and they might not be able to do it, and they probably can't do it all. But let's just see. Let's see this. And his point was very, very much about getting the superstar people in the first place, spending a lot of time on the recruitment side of things. So that's the one I've heard that's a bit different. The pod stuff, I mean, that for me usually works if you do it right.
Just explain for
Yeah.
those listening who perhaps haven't come across the concept of a pod structure. What actually is a pod structure?
Okay, so you've kind of got three bits to the agency. I did it the other way around. It's you've got the kind of management almost, and I mean that as this maybe the CEO and maybe the finance director or whatever. As you scale up, some obviously £1 million, you're probably the owner's kind of over here. In the middle, you've got the core team servicing the client, and what I mean by that is a project. It can be all different terminology, obviously, but a project, different types of agency, a project manager, an account manager, and then a specialist. So it might be a real data specialist or a strategist maybe in that role. And then it might be a mobile and web agency I work with. They've just hired a scrum master to go into that sort of PM role, so that they can do all the efficiency and operational stuff and the management of the work scheduling and so on. The account manager hopefully then is more freed up to service the client properly, the stuff you advise on, obviously expertly, and sell a little bit in the right way to the client. Get the opportunity, have the right meetings, the quarterly meetings or whatever, talk about the strategy with the client, not be worried about bogged down with how are the team going to service it all. It's the PM's role. And then you've got the specialist to come into the meetings, obviously, with the accounts person and hopefully get better ideas out of the client, which we can then, the agency can then deliver on. So that's the kind of the core bit. And that pod, I mean, there's so many variables to that. That pod, we tend to say, might do 650 revenue up to about $1 million. But that could be, that could be a couple of big clients. That could be multiple small ones, or a mixture of both. But obviously, there is no definitive numbers on these because, as you know, you could have. They had one client that had pods that had 1.8 million going through it. Only had two clients, but because that one of them was, a huge client for the agency.
Yeah.
The account management team couldn't have coped with, 5 or 6 other clients. It just wouldn't have been feasible. So that's that. And then you've almost got, and this is no derogatory term, the bench. The bench is the people doing the work. So it might be the development team. It might be, sometimes search agencies, I think, don't maybe adopt this model and they don't see how it works for them when they might have a, SEO head, PPC head, whatever, social media head. And they think, how can this work? But actually it can work. We've put it into some search agencies before and it does work. But it takes time. A pod thing probably takes 6 to 8 months to properly put in, because you're trying to map out what you are now, where you want to go, and show people their career opportunities. So you've got to get all that out clear first and understand it before you can go anywhere near doing it.
And if you get above £1 million revenue per pod, how does that pod grow, or doesn't it? Do you just set up another pod?
You tend to, that's a good question. So I suppose the logical thing, in reality, what happens is you might have another. People bring on a lot of account people, don't they? They always want to be hiring an account manager or an account exec or whatever, and they're not really thinking about the role. So if you've got it clarified, you go, well, okay, I've got one pod. I might start another one and start putting some clients into there. I might have this PM role kind of floating between the two. And then as it gets bigger, you hire in another, or you bring on, another account exec into AM or CSD or whatever, however big the agency is. They then manage the other pod. And eventually, I say CSD, they're probably the person overseeing. It's a little bit like our friends that we work with, where they've got a CSD character, haven't they, overseeing various pod leads.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And you found that actually that's the most conducive, because obviously different agencies that you start working with have probably got all different structures. But do you tend to kind of try to formulate that structure or give them the benefits of doing that? And do you find that they say, oh yes, that's fine, or do you get any resistance?
There is a lot. Obviously, this is the people's company you're sort of messing, and they've got a history of trying to grow a company to a certain stage, and then they're looking for somebody to help. And nobody has. We have no magic wands. We just have, I suppose, between us a lot of experience. Yeah, and people do resist it. Absolutely, they do. And sometimes it doesn't work. I've worked with somebody before where they almost took it by the words of the book and tried to implement it really quickly, and they didn't really. I think from stepping back and looking third party sort of in. They didn't really do what we just said, say, what are we now? what do we want to be? And it might be this pod structure, and how are we going to evolve to that? It can't just change overnight. This is people's lives, careers, and so on. You're sort of messing with.
Yeah.
So they didn't take the time. So you do get a lot of resistance. But actually, if I go back to the health check question, I think most agencies we end up working with, the biggest issue is the structure isn't right. So they think it's lots of other things, but actually, when you sit back and answer, go through it all and think of right, it's often the structure's not right. And I don't think there is. I'm just trying to say, I don't think there is another model we've put in somewhere that's really worked better than this pod system. When it's worked well, it's worked really well.
So that's really fascinating, Mark. So what's a symptom that they come with, and then you unpick it and realise it's a structure?
Sometimes it's a debate we've had once upon a time. Actually, often it's that AM PM sort of split, and I know that's obvious to say, but they often, one of the exercises we will often do is say, let's say financial budgeting, yeah. So we're doing, I don't know, let's just say we're doing 100 grand a month revenue this year at the moment. We say, okay, well, let's have a high level stab at next year's budget. Okay, where are we going to start? And some people go, well, the sales are going to go up in line like this, or the cost of this, we need to make this much at the top. And then you go, okay, well, let's take it another way. What clients have you got? What are you going to get from those clients? It sounds obvious to some, but it's not obvious. I know to lots of people. What are you going to get from those clients? What do you think you could get? Do all the usual stuff. And then you go, okay. And then they go, but we can't get that. And you go, why can't you get it? And they go, so our account management team aren't good enough. And you go, okay, well, what do the account managers do then? And you start to, all right, so that person's a project manager then. No, they're an account, and then you start getting into that debate. And that's why I say often it is the structure. It really is. And always, I think most of the time you find agencies have too many people for the revenue they're doing because the structure isn't right. So they're throwing people at it, not fixing processes and systems and so on. I could go on about this all day, and I probably am. Actually, I should stop.
Please, that you've triggered me with this discussion because being an account manager myself, most of my life, I was a marketing manager for a few years, but most of my life I've been in account management, and most of that tenure has been in hybrid roles. So I am the project manager and I am the account manager, and it's one of those things that I've realised later in my career. Now I'm consulting with agencies, how nuts that really is.
It's interesting
because it just really fights. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that just convinced that it works, and it has worked. So, but I just see really, really talented, commercially minded account managers coming on my course. I suppose this is my day-to-day experience, and yet they're kind of really bogged down by admin, resourcing, scopes of work, financial reconciliations, and you think, my God, they should be out there selling, growing, adding value to the business, talking to clients and helping. So you've triggered me. And just carry on, really. So
what's I just going to say that some people who won't, hopefully people listen to this eventually, and some people won't know me or whatever, and they'll think, how does this guy profess to know about this stuff when he's never worked in an agency? He's only been in it 6 years, and actually, what I think, if somebody, people don't often, but if they ask me what my previous experiences were, then accountancy practices, bizarrely, are not that different to an agency. They're not as creative. I'll give you that. But they have account management roles. They have project management roles. They have delivery roles. They have graduate trainees that take up a lot of time for the senior people, and that causes resentment. All these things, very similar, and often. And I think, what did I have in many roles? I had far too many things going on. I was trying to manage 35 clients, a team of 40 people, win new business, upsell to a client, and work with the marketing team, and be head of client satisfaction. So you're like, well, how can you do all those things? And, many years ago, I saw somebody I know actually up here in Scotland went into a role as a new business director in an accountancy. Everyone was like, oh my goodness, how can you have that not completely non-fee earning, just like going out like schmoozing all the time? Absolutely you could, because they got their structure right. They had the right people doing the jobs, the work, doing the technical bits, project managing it, for want of a better word. So, it's a very similar industry in a lot of ways that people often overlook.
And how would you, if someone was listening to this and it's really resonating with them and thinking, actually, we could look at separating these two roles, where would you advise an agency owner start with that process?
I think, okay, I think the thing for me would be to not not necessarily write down what that person's doing, although sometimes that's a good place to start because then you might identify. But is to write down what you think a account manager should be doing and what you think a project manager should be doing, and then sitting and looking at the team you've got and going, well, okay, well if these are the right people, right seat, everybody bangs on it. If these are the right people, then do they fit into these roles? If they don't fit into these roles, you've got a slight issue, obviously, that you need to deal with over time. But there might be other roles that they go into. I think you've got to clearly identify what you think the roles are, and then if it's not quite right, you've got to be honest and transparent with your team about that. And so I've got a client at the moment where one of the team doesn't really know what they want to do in their career, but is pivotal at the moment to the agency given the size of it. And really, the agency needs both. It needs AM, it needs AD, and the PM. It really does need these roles separated out. It's causing too many inefficiencies. So what we've done is we've basically job specced out those two roles and said, "There's no right. You're the right person to grow with this agency. Absolutely, you are. Like, and it's up to you. You go whichever way you want, but we'll support you in. It might be getting Jenny Plant's training on account management. It might be getting somebody else for you, project management training, specialist support around you. It might be sales training. You can have all the training you want, but in this agency's opinion, this person needs to choose which role they go. And that can sound a bit harsh, but actually, you'll be the same. I've worked with many people over the years before I did this, and some people do need that bit of a steer on their career path. They need a bit of help because they are a bit kind of lost often.
I agree, Mark, and I also think there's a bit of what do you have a natural tendency for? Like, what's your natural default? Because having worked with so many different kind of hybrid account managers and also project managers are really good at process, getting things done, being transactional, and kind of they're very good with clients. But pure account managers tend to be different. They're looking at account growth, they're looking at business strategy, they're looking at adding value, and you can kind of put them in the middle of a room and by the end of the night they'll know everyone. So the more and more I see these different types of, I think people have a natural tendency towards one or the other. And I think if you ask anyone, I think they'd probably, if they're really honest, it's probably quite obvious from the outside, but asking someone as well, I think would be a good way of.
Do you personality test people then?
I don't, but
No,
I'm thinking about starting to do it.
Yeah, that's quite, yeah. I know a few people that do that, and it's quite interesting. But then I sometimes think that it is like you just said, actually, if you've got the right people on board, and that in itself is a huge thing to have to do, take your time to get the right people and so on, then you want them to grow with you. So why not offer them opportunity? Why not go, this is us today? And it's almost that visionary piece, isn't it? This is a lot of what we would do, is work with, what are you today? Where do you want to go? And now you need to be articulating that clearly to the team, because if you don't, people will leave. That's proven without doubt. There's a lot of surveys out at the moment around this, isn't there? It's lack of communication, lack of clarity of company, which is understandable given the year we've just been on. But what I'm certainly trying to get our clients to do at the moment is spend time working on what the agency is, where it's going, and speaking to the team about it regularly, keeping everybody informed.
Great idea, because then everyone feels like they're coming with you rather than fighting against you.
Yeah,
or
hopefully,
not feeling part of it.
yeah.
And I think that bit, like, just from personal experience, looking back on my career, I was bogged down with spreadsheets, and I was much better at being with people. My communication skills were much better than actually sitting there poring over financial reconciliations, etc. So I just think that this topic is huge. As you say, get the right people, and if they're in the right seats, then the business has a fighting chance of growing really well. I'm just curious, what types of questions should agency owners be asking you that they don't?
What should they be asking that? Oh goodness. Okay, I did. I've done a lot of pitches over my time before Cactus, and I don't ever get asked about that. I think people think, oh, he was the accountant and like he couldn't be creative and so on. And a lot of qualifying out opportunities and working out whether it was right for our firm and for all the rest of it and so on. But people never ask us about if we came up with any innovative ways of pitching or even innovative, I suppose, upsell sort of opportunities. What I mean by that is we came up with a thing at Grant Thornton, actually, I think it was, where we called it the CEO room because we're not good at branding, obviously, as you know, accountants. But
Not that bad.
the CEO room was basically a concept where, if you think, we were working with mostly some big organisations in Scotland, but also global organisations that happen to have a presence in Scotland. So one, for example, had offices in, I think it was Dubai, New York, and so on. And so what we came up with this concept where we'd get the senior leaders in that company into a room with us, and we would get the top people from audit, tax, whatever it is, M&A, advisory work, and we would just sit and listen and brainstorm, not always sit, but brainstorm around where that company was going. So if the companies, they would tell us well, we're in, I don't know, Africa at the moment, and we're thinking of going to Brazil and so on and blah, blah, blah. And the idea of that was that we could then sit and listen about all the opportunities that would be for tax planning or overseas branches. And, GT was in most countries in the world. So that in itself brought quite a lot of fee income back to the company, I think, that concept.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely great idea.
So, and that's
anything else?
Anything else that they should be asking me that they don't? I can't think of anything else. No, I can't, Jenny. No,
that's
sorry.
okay. No, that's okay because this is so good, and you're delivering some knowledge bombs. How much visibility of the agency numbers do you think the whole team should have versus just the agency owner?
Okay, so I work with a couple of people that one particular, and I've done some sort of strategy work with the other one, is and they let their team see everything.
Wow.
So salaries for everybody, self-regulate, a little bit like, if you read Maverick,
No.
the book by Ricardo Semler.
No.
Oh, you must. Oh, if you're an average. So that book is I'll get it right now. I think it was a family business in Brazil, and the business wasn't doing too well. I think it's a manufacturing business. I can't. Anyway, so the son took it on, and he came in with a completely unique way of looking at things. So, for example, everybody knew what everybody was getting paid, and this was a big company, by the way. They would do a little thing on the door where they would. This is going back quite a few years, where you would go in and you would color tag against your name. So it told everybody going in when they had to clock in what mood you're in, which I thought was genius. We did a similar thing once at GT where we did personality profiling. We had everybody's colours up on their name tag around the office. Great. So when you go around, you could see, all right, well, I know Mark's the head case, I'm not going to speak to him then. But so that was one of the first times I've ever read about this self-regulating the pay and so on. And I know two agencies that do that, and it seems to work for them. One of them's got constantly wins like best culture in the sort of small business section of different things. Very, very open agency. The other one is, and they're in the UK. The other one is a dispersed agency, a development house, where they've got people in, I can't remember how many countries around the world. It's not that big. It's probably 15 to 20 people. But again, and imagine that one where somebody in the UK could be paid 50 grand versus somebody somewhere else in a different society that's maybe paid 20 for the same job, but it works for them because they understand that UK living, the cost of living is so much more different to, or vice versa or whatever. So it works. Would I do it? I don't know if I would.
I was going to say, would you, because you've got some good case studies there where it's worked, would you say that you would recommend it?
I don't think I would possibly go to the extremes with the cash flow, because the cash flow sometimes, although as I said earlier on, a lot are pretty okay at the moment, that can be a complete stress. And I think that's unless you were 100% transparent about everything and everybody understood the commercials and the impact of those. And actually in one of those agencies, they train people on the financials as well. Clever. So that's probably why it helps. Clever. Then I don't think I would go personally to that extreme, because I think there are a couple of things you perhaps don't need to share, and that pressure almost maybe doesn't. Although some people would say that pressure is a good thing, but if you can't drive the sales, if that's not, is it a good thing? And but what I would say is, other than maybe the cash flow, and probably wouldn't do the salaries, although I've worked and I've got this ongoing with a couple of clients at the moment where they're looking at salary bandings, and so on. I've worked in places where that's worked, and it hasn't really caused too many issues at all, really. Would I go salaries? Probably not. Would I share everything else? Probably, because I think the more you hide, the less the team feel they're part of something, don't they?
Yeah. I
So
agree. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Okay, that's good advice. Look, I'm conscious of time, but I do have
yeah,
another couple of questions. Um, in terms of the changes we've seen happening, Mark, I know you were really active on LinkedIn, sharing some fantastic information that you were interpreting really quickly from what the government was talking about in terms of furlough schemes, etc., and grants and aid for agencies. So I know that you've done a lot of work in this area, but what do you see sort of happening now and in the agency landscape in the near future?
okay. I think there's a few things actually. M&A's obviously on a lot of people's lips. You're probably hearing that in some of the, I don't know if you follow other podcasts or talks or whatever, but it goes back to what I said earlier on. Quite a few agencies, and I've got some of these at the moment. I'm doing 2 deals at the moment where we're probably selling the agencies actually, and another one might be doing a kind of management buyout, which I'm helping on. But people have got money. Some agencies have got a pile of money. They've had, a C bill. They might have just topped that up as well with a recovery loan that they've been able to get, whether it's right or not, I'm not going to say on this because it's up to people individually. But, people have got money to spend. And although what I would say on the flip side is a lot of agencies are doing quite well. So their prices are not going down. And the couple we sold towards the end of last year were good prices, So, it's not like you're going to get necessarily a cheap deal. And if you were, I'd probably be thinking, well, why are we buying that? Is it the right thing? So that's one thing. I think a lot of pipelines at the moment that I see, because we have our own pipeline tool that we try to put into agencies and so on, that usually really helps them quite quickly. A lot of opportunities are for the specialist agencies. That seems to be coming to the fore a lot more. So if you're a PPC only agency, there's a lot of opportunities to becoming dedicated to that. If I think the more full service, it's probably a bit trickier sometimes at the moment than the
Interesting.
specialists. So that's definitely something I think is changing. And then team, I think this goes back to the vision bit again. There's a lot of turnover of people at the moment, and that's not just people hiring, because there are lots hiring. There are actually quite a lot of people leaving, and
Really?
I think I was reading, doing some research for a board meeting last week, and there was a Deloitte survey, I think it was last year, saying 2 out of 3 people, it's in the marketing space, 2 out of 3 people feel that they don't get clear communication on where the agency's going. So for me, it goes back to that. What are we now? Where we go in the roadmap? Articulate it. Quarterly stand-ups, monthly emails, or a quick check-in. Everybody, this is how we're going, and this is your career path. Because there has been quite a lot of churn this year to, SaaS businesses that are well funded, other agencies, people going, well, I've had enough of the last year. It's made me think about my career. I'm coming out of the agency game. So as much as there's recruitment, there's also quite a lot of people leaving. I think that's a challenge at the moment.
Wow. So that's really useful what you've just shared, actually. The reason for the churn, or one of the contributing factors, is the fact that they don't feel communicated with. And it absolutely goes back to what you were saying before about being more
Yeah,
transparent.
I think it's been, well, you obviously last year was hard because I think most owners were like, I got asked to do on this M&A stuff I'm doing at the moment. Can we give them the budgets we did for last year, and actually the actual results we did? Well, to be honest, we were budgeting every 3 weeks. It was a pie. What's the point? Almost we were changing it every week because the new scheme was coming in. Whatever other some of the search clients, one of the agencies I was working with, were coming off a cliff, pausing all their project, retainers. So all of that is, it's just created uncertainty. So it was hard. It is hard, isn't it, for people to articulate? But I think just quickly, the other thing that we've been doing, we've run this mastermind thing recently where we've had 16 agencies as a cohort. We've got 5 groups going. We've just about sold out the next one. And what we try to do for pre-work for that is get everybody to do a Pecha Kucha. if you know what a
Yes,
petrified you
yeah,
do,
yeah.
Jenny, don't
Or
you? Yeah.
explain for everybody listening that
So
doesn't know.
20 slides, 20 second a slide. What is that on the mass personalized? 6.5 minutes or whatever. And they're supposed to articulate who they are, what they're trying to do themselves personally, but also their business, where they want their business to go. And we always think that's a critical thing for anybody on this mastermind, and actually start to do it with clients now because they're weaving it into their cred stacks and so on. That's quite a quick, visual, snappy thing. So a pecha for me is, if you haven't done one, look it up. It's a whole, it's Japanese for chit chat, I think, isn't it? Look it up. Probably do one because it makes you think about where you're going, your
Great
business,
idea.
and it's great for the creds. It's great for the cred stacks. So
Amazing. Any other final words of advice for an agency leader that we haven't talked about that you think, it's critical to understand if you want to grow your agencies?
yeah. Actually, so there's two things I would say. There's one, most people don't have clarity on their pipeline, and I don't mean they don't know what leads are coming. They don't have a tool or a process. They have some in the owner's email inbox. They have some with the account manager's inbox. They have some on the spreadsheet. So they have a SaaS tool that doesn't really tell them. It just has columns that tell you about the stages of how each opportunity is. It doesn't really tell you what's coming in the next couple of months with clarity. So I think a pipeline tool is fundamental, and we've built one over many years. Pete and Spencer built it. We've evolved it over agencies. Anybody we work with, we show them that on like day one or on the strategy day with them straight away, or on the mastermind, because to me, it's like the most fundamental tool that they should have in place first. And I think the other bit is the vision bit. Is again, we work quite a bit on that with Andy. Then you asked me earlier on about what do we do at the beginning. That to me is, a lot of people don't really have they don't need to have a 3 or 5 year plan, but they need at least a year plan. Otherwise, what are you trying to go towards? So having that kind of step back and get away from these screens or the office when we're in offices, and thinking about where they actually want to go. So a bit around the vision and putting a couple of numbers around that. What's the revenue going to be? What are the number of people? Because you can guarantee most people have too many people on it. But then, it's a starting point, isn't it? It's something to aim for. So
You've been talking to me, actually, Mark. I'm thinking I need to do that. So
I
thank you for that. That was a real moment of wow. So I'm glad. I'm really glad you shared that, because I'm sure people listening will be thinking the same thing. So Mark, thank you first of all for sharing so
no
much
worries.
value. This has been really sort of eye-opening for me. How can people reach you, and who would you like to be contacted by, and what's the best way? Because I know you've got this, it's difficult because you are so, you've got so many clients on the go. So I know that your time is limited.
No, it's fine. So I love speaking to people. I love speaking to people and hearing their stories. I love just so you can email me at mark@cactus, so mark@cact.us. Funny ending, and or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I tend not to accept connections on LinkedIn. If people message me, that's just my way of doing LinkedIn. I'm a bit weird. So whether that works or not, Jenny, I have no idea. But I just try to keep it to people I kind of know or have met. But you can send me a message, and that's fine. I can have a call or whatever. But I'm happy to have a call with anybody. And really, agency owners, or often I've supported quite a lot of finance people in agencies over the years. I probably don't say that enough, actually. So if there's any finance people that think actually it'd be quite interesting to chew the fat over X, Y, and Z, if they're whatever FM or FD or finance control or whatever, then I'm happy to have a call as well to see if we can help in any way.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mark. We'll include those links in the show notes so people can find you straight away. So once again, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate your time.
All right. Cheers, Jenny. Take care.
Brilliant.